Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Kelly Lacrosse, a Senior Customer Success Manager for Business Applications in Microsoft Software and Digital Platform Organization. My role is to help customers like you achieve business value realization from the investments you made in Microsoft's Dynamics 365 and Power Platform solutions through successful adoption. The goal of today's session is to empower you to create your own journey to success for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform through effective planning. In this session, we're going to focus on how you can achieve D365 and Power Platform project success and business value realization through the proper implementation of a success methodology, workshop activities, and the development of a success plan. I'll then share with you a real customer story that brings all of this to light. So let's get started. When we look at the success rate of projects, 70% of all projects fail, according to several industry project management organizations. What's even more interesting about this is that the most common causes for these failures are not necessarily the technology, but rather to either a poorly defined solution strategy, undefined business processes, a lack of organizational change management, or a combination of all three. So how do you avoid being part of that 70% failure rate? It's by having a formal success planning methodology that focuses on measurable business outcomes, has consistent and repeatable business processes, tracks your progress against established benchmarks, and has an executive commitment to organizational readiness. So who's critical to driving this success planning methodology? Well, we've identified three key groups that will have a direct impact. First are the executives. These are the CFOs, the CIOs, controllers, the VPs of sales and customer service, or the director of marketing or IT. These individuals are the number one direct contributors to the success of any project. And this is based on a 20-year study conducted by ProSci, a leader in change management research. In this study, they found that active and visible sponsorship in a project directly increases the rate of a project's success and adoption by 6x. The next key stakeholder groups are the success owners. These are the doers. These are the folks that set the foundation for the solution success, whether it's through the proper design, efficient project management, application administration, or effective communications and resistance management for the end user community. The last key group is critical to a project's success and the solution's adoption. They are the early adopters and champions. These are your individuals that represent your greatest asset in driving adoption and usage. They're your evangelists and internal change makers because they see the solution's benefits and the positive impact that it can have on their jobs, their teams, and or their customers. So how do you implement a success methodology? You start with a success planning workshop for Microsoft Business Applications. Now, this is a proven planning activity that's straightforward to implement, and that's really helped thousands of Microsoft customers like yourself establish clarity and alignment around what success looks like for the project. It also helps you identify what challenges to overcome in order to achieve a successful implementation, as well as successful business impact from the solution itself. The workshop is not focused on technology. Rather, it's on the readiness of your organization to transform your business through new ways of working and servicing your customers through either Dynamics 365 or Power Platform, which in turn helps you to achieve your business goals. The success planning workshop is based on a number of business value models to include, for example, Gartner's maturity model and ProSci's change management methodology. The success planning workshop consists of 6 major focus items that are discussed and actively developed during the workshop. They are vision and strategy, understanding the complexity, readiness, diagnoses, gaps and risks, an application of best practices, and finally, developing an action plan. These create the foundation for the project and adoption success. So let's take a deeper look at each one of them. The first step is to set your vision and strategic intent for your Microsoft solution. This is going to be your North Star for the project during and post-deployment. Having a vision helps the organization easily and clearly articulate what the desired end state is and how you're going to get there. The vision provides a clear purpose for the project, for the organization, and represents an ongoing commitment to the project's success. It's also a great way to validate or prove your desired outcome or outcomes, meaning, did your vision come to light? And if so, how? In order to establish your vision, we begin by building a vision statement. It becomes basically your project's rally cry for what your organization would like to achieve in the future and answers the why are we doing this and what's in it for me, specifically for the end user community. It also generates alignment between the lines of business and the IT stakeholders on specific value drivers and goals. And it serves as the foundation for the development of your success metrics, your solution roadmap, governance, and technology strategy. In tandem with establishing a vision, you also need to create a strategic intent for your Microsoft solution. Now, the strategic intent evolves from the answers to the following questions. Why did you invest in the solution? What's the potential value gain? What does success look like, and how are you going to measure it? What are the KPIs and metrics? And what constitutes successful adoption of the solution? Usage specifically and impact. And as you can see on the right-hand side, these are actual customer answers to these three questions, and yours are going to be very specific as well. Once the vision and strategic intent statement is created, I then use the following template with my customers, and it's very progressive, right? So we start off with the strategic intent and project vision, 1 to 2 sentences, just really, summarizing what the vision is all about, which then is supported by the business outcomes. What do you want it to deliver? And then what does successful adoption look like? These could be just 3 to 5 different behaviors that you hope to see post-deployment, focusing on successful adoption. And then the last is, what are the key performance indicators to measure that success? And as your project progresses pre and post deployment, you can also use this vision and strategic intent assessment as a tool to help you check the viability of your vision, your strategy, and your KPI. So you can rate them from 0 to 10 on a scale, with 0 being the best and 10 being the worst. And this will really help you identify if your message is landing with the end user community, if your KPIs are in alignment, and if funding and resources are still secured and the project sponsor is fully engaged. Once the vision and strategic intent have been understood and validated, the next step is to try to understand the current environment, most specifically around the complexity and uncertainties that are either expected or assumed for the project, and then the successful adoption of the solution. First, we have to ask both the business and IT stakeholders to look at the project holistically. They need to really fully appreciate the scale, the scope, the level of complexity, and any potential compromises up front. We also need to agree on how much of the business does the implementation affect, meaning how many people are going to be required to do their jobs differently. And is this mission critical? Meaning, is it going to affect your customers, your revenue? We then dig deeper during the workshop to look at what the potential blockers are to the project and to adoption success. And in our experience as customer success managers, we've identified the following 10 key blockers. We go through each blocker and rate them on a scale from 0 to 10, meaning we work with you and you actually rate them. Usually this is conducted individually within the workshop, not as a group. And then we tally all of the numbers together to get a total. And at that point, we talk through each of the blockers and identify where the challenges are. For example, vision and objectives. Are they going to change during the program, or are they locked in? How mission critical is the program to the success? Is this a department project? Is this a division? Is this an entire company with customer facing and revenue impact? How likely is the budget and funding to change during the program? Is it fully secured or is it ad hoc funding? And anywhere in between. We look at external factors that are going to impact the program, things like compliance and regulation. And we look at if there are none or if it's a highly regulated industry such as finance and healthcare. The next blocker we look at is the timeline. We ask, how unrealistic is the timeline? Is it competing against other several projects that are going on at the same time? And we need to determine if it's a fully realistic and detailed timeline, and then we rate that accordingly. The next blocker is the provability of the implementation teams, both internal and external. So we discuss things like certifications, geographic presence, resource scalability, industry focus, and rate that accordingly. The next blocker we look at is the complexity of the organization structure. Are we looking at just a simple geography, or are we looking at complex, multiple geographies with many languages and cultures? We also look at the complexity behind the organization's business processes. Are they simple, linear, standard processes, or are they complex workflows, or they have multiple business rules? And then we look at the data environment. How well is it managed? And are there, for example, implemented data policies and ownerships? Or are we dealing with minimal owners, multiple schemas, or no formal data cleansing reviews, for example? And then the last complexity value that we look at is the IT environment itself. So, for example, is this going to be a D365 tenant for all the lines of business and security rules, or are we dealing with disparate platforms and complex integrations? And the fun thing about this particular activity is that it's always interesting to see what the total complexity quotient comes to and the amount of dialogue among the workshop participants that it creates, which is exactly what you want. You want to collectively agree on the level of complexity and identify which specific areas need to be addressed early on in the project so that there aren't any surprises during the deployment. Now, once we understand the magnitude of the complexity, we need to diagnose our readiness for this major change. During the workshop, we leverage different industry-based maturity models, such as this one that you see, to first help identify a baseline for the project and the solution and where you aspire to be post-deployment and thereafterwards. Many customers, in my experience, start at either level 1 or level 2, so don't be worried, it's not an issue. During the project, though, we continue to assess where we're at so that we're still working to our aspirational level. Post-deployment is a perfect time to reevaluate. Many times I've seen at least 1 to 2 level increases. And we also have used this during our quarterly and annual business reviews because this is a journey. The nice thing about this model also is that I've seen organizations use this as they develop their technology roadmap. Now, once you've identified the organization's maturity level, you can't forget about the people's readiness for change. And a few great ways to do so is to leverage, for example, ProSize risk assessments, or even create your own assessment, as one of my colleagues did through a survey that she created for her customers' Power Platform project. We can't forget, as we prepare for the solution for readiness, we need to make sure that the people are ready for that change as well. We then determine your level of maturity against what we call the 5 elements of success. Now, these are pretty easy to answer based on our previous activities that we've done during the workshop for vision and strategic intent, the outputs for change readiness assessments. So we really, at this point, look at the elements 3, 4, and 5. And we need to address the questions for technical roadmap and infrastructure, such as how well defined is your technology roadmap and your IT architecture, and how do you programmatically review new technology needs with the business, including approaches to new releases, for example. The next program is governance and communications. We need to answer how effective are you with managing your delivery through a very structured process of clear sponsorship, business and IT collaboration, and ownership, and a clear and defined approach to communications to your end users. And then how mature is your operational disciplines? Specifically, do you have all of the components and regimen in place to manage the risks related to your business, such as business continuity plans and operational support plans post-deployment? Once we've determined where on the maturity level you're starting from and where you want to be, the next step is conducting a gap analysis between the customer success maturity levels and the 5 elements of success. This will then determine the gaps that need to be closed and then set the necessary action plan and recommendations in place going forward. So in order to track people readiness, I use this scorecard with my customers. I call it the Stoplight People Readiness Assessment. I use it during my project plan and executive sponsor meetings with my customers. It outlines the different activities that'll drive adoption success and the recommended best practices associated with that adoption factor. And obviously, who owns it. So as you can see, it includes ownership from both IT and business. So there's quite a bit of valuable activities and outputs that come from the success planning workshop. So I thought I'd share with you exactly how we developed the workshop's agenda. And as you can see, this was an all-day workshop. However, the beauty of the workshop components themselves is that they're really modular, so you can complete your workshop in mini workshops based on participant time and availability, manageability, and even knowledge level. So, for example, I conducted a success criteria workshop, mini workshop, for one of my customers, and a vision and strategic intent statement mini workshop for another customer. And I've also worked with a customer on creating a complexity assessment online survey because the workshop representatives were around the world. So we were challenged with time zones. So feel free to get creative if necessary. The key deliverable once you've finished the success planning workshop is the customer success plan. The customer success plan includes all the discussions, the activities, the assessments, and the recommendations that surface during the workshop. And it also helps identify and document the key gaps between the pillars of success and the maturity model. And most importantly, it acts as a living document throughout the project and post-deployment. It serves as a baseline to drive a list of all of those recommended activities and tools and additional assessments that might be needed in order to mitigate any risks during and post-deployment, such as we need additional training, or we need retraining, or we have employee resistance that need to be managed, or less or more communications. These are all examples to help close those target-driven gaps. So what does the customer success plan look like? This is just an example that clearly outlines the vision statement. It establishes the baseline and aspirational maturity levels and success levels and the level of change management readiness. And it lists the key success criteria, all of the measurements, projected attainable timelines, where we are from a status of achievement perspective. And it clearly spells out all of the necessary actions, recommendations, engagements, events by date and by owner. The customer success plan becomes a powerful tool before, during, and after the implementation of your Microsoft business application. One of my customers' project sponsor actually used the customer success plan in addition to the project plan to update the senior executives during their executive steering committee meetings. So I'd like to now walk you through a specific customer story about the effectiveness and impact that success planning had on a customer of mine. My customer is a global steel manufacturer of over 27,000 employees worldwide. They are a company of acquisitions, and they are a very decentralized environment. They have multiple divisions across various product lines. They also have various aging technologies, and they have a very tenured employee force with the average tenure of about 20 plus years. And because they were growing so fast, they needed to make major changes in their business to keep up. And one of those changes was to move to one central ERP solution. It would be a multi-year project with multiple implementation partners across the different divisions. And as you know, an ERP solution is mission critical, and therefore there was certainly a fair amount of fair uncertainty and doubt across the end user community because they were used to working a certain way and using longstanding tools, and that was about to change. So we conducted mini workshops from the success planning workshop because let me say that they were new to all of this success planning. So we started small and we developed a vision and strategic intent statement. And then each division created their own statement that was specific to their business goals and objectives for their product lines. And then they collectively rolled all of these divisional statements up to a corporate statement that supported the company's vision, mission, and values. They aligned then the solution's capabilities against their existing pain points and then looked at how those pain points could be addressed through the technology of Microsoft to then better align their metrics across sales, purchasing, shipping, receiving, and accounting, for example. As far as change management is concerned, they identified first the key executives that would lead this change effort across the division, and each division created their own champion networks of managers, supervisors, team leads, super users. They were all directly involved with the project throughout. For example, the design process, acceptance testing, and feedback to the project teams and sponsors. And given their decentralized structure, they developed as a best practice a business application center of excellence, where IT and the line of business representatives came together to share and collaborate and develop a collective technology roadmap for their dynamic solution. This is an example of their vision and strategic intent. Actually, this is not an example. It's the actual vision and strategic intent statement that they created. There were 4 key goals that they wanted to get from D365, which were to streamline their current processes from manual to automated. They were looking to drive process and employee effectiveness and deliver accurate information to management so that they could make better and more proactive decisions. The strategic intent was in direct alignment to their company mission of providing unparalleled customer care, trusted partnerships, and creating sustained value. So their vision and strategic intent statement clearly addressed what they were doing with D365, why they were doing it, the benefits to the end users, and how it would impact them and their business, and how, most importantly, it directly aligned to their corporate mission. From a readiness impact, based on their success planning, their level of readiness was high. So as each division rolled out their dynamic solution, they became more and more successful because of this planning foundation they developed and the best practice sharing that resulted from it. And these are just a couple of quotes from the various users across the company post-deployment. And the nice thing is to note that the active leadership that was involved, they fully understood and set realistic expectations for the end user community. And they also identified the risks early on and mitigated them as best possible. I remember during one of the division's post-go live steering committee meetings, the senior exec stated that she couldn't believe how smooth the go live went. It was almost, in her words, almost too good to be true. But she stated that here in this quote that, they fully realized that this shift was no easy task. It took a lot of effort from a lot of people, and in the end, it really paid off. From a best practice impact, the cross-divisional representatives saw the Center of Excellence as a key component for best practice sharing, alignment to the company's initiatives, and then their overall strategy going forward. This story is just one of many examples of the power of success planning that you can have and the resulting positive impact on the end user community and the overall business. If you'd like more information about the success planning methodology, the success planning workshop itself, or to receive the assets of the customer success plan, please feel free to click on the QR code here. Thank you for your time and attention. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you found this session helpful and insightful.